Hey, Assel, welcome to our next podcast. Great to see you again this week. So
Likewise.
we're following up this week on the topic of LinkedIn, but I thought it would be good to jump in on how LinkedIn works well with email. So we've combined both, and I'd love to know what you've learned about using them together.
LinkedIn and email work surprisingly well together. Initially, I was just an email guy that, like I mentioned in our last podcast. But over the time, I came to know with the hands-on experience that a combination of both works really well. Uh, Initially, way back, we had a very different strategy, and we were using LinkedIn and email as both separate platforms for the same data set for our campaigns. And we were running email campaigns the way we generally run, and with the LinkedIn, we were using automations, automated tools to run the campaigns. But after a couple of months, we ran into a lot of problems where our profiles were getting restricted. Overall strategy was not that effective. Then we had to regroup and we came up with a different strategy where we now use again same data set for both email and LinkedIn, and we use both the platforms simultaneously on the same data set, and that way it works.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember the days of trying automation, and we even tried email automation that was supposed to message people on LinkedIn as well, or the LinkedIn automation was meant to also send out an email. And we just never really found any tools that really did both very well,
Yeah.
leading us to create our own process. But yeah, so you mentioned the fact that we use the same data set to send out to LinkedIn and email. What I'd love to hear from you is like how people can avoid kind of tangling up their messages by messaging onto platforms. For example, crossing wires or messaging somebody the wrong thing if they've already said I don't want to hear from you and then keep following them up on a different platform. How do you go about like avoiding those kinds of problems?
There are many ways to track responses, right? So I'm just gonna go one layer above it and talk about the overall campaign. Every company or person, whoever is doing outbound marketing, they have to have some kind of a reporting dashboard where they are keeping the replies of people whoever said interested or do not contact me or whatsoever. So there would be some CRM or a reporting dashboard that they are using it. So once you have a reporting dashboard, now you come to the second layer where you can just cross check with the data set that you have. And if somebody says I'm not interested, or maybe somebody says I am interested, let's have a call, then make sure that you from your main data set you make sure that you either delete that person's information, mark it as a red label, or whatever your strategy is in order to. Yeah. So you can just tag that lead as do not contact, and then you can just make sure that from the main data set you don't use it for either email or LinkedIn anymore. So it's pretty simple. It's not that difficult.
Yeah, got it. Okay, so you recommend LinkedIn and email together. We've not found email or LinkedIn email automation tools to be that productive to do it together. So, how do you find it kind of when booking calls across both platforms? Do you do a different script for email? Do you do a different script for LinkedIn? How does it work together to maximize the opportunities for booking calls?
We definitely use two different scripts for both two different platforms. Reason being, with LinkedIn especially, it's really different than email. You can't really send out lengthy messages, and you can't be really salesy. So LinkedIn is more like a conversational platform where you can just engage with the prospects. You can like their post or make meaningful comments and just get their attention, and then basically warm them up via LinkedIn and start having the conversation. So generally we craft our messaging for LinkedIn in a very conversational tone. We just give them the idea who we are and what we do. And via email, it's more different where they can't really see your picture, or even if they can see your picture at the header, they can't really see your credentials or profile like LinkedIn. So we generally tend to be more pitch oriented with our scripts on email, where we just give them a brief overview of who we are, why we are reaching out to you, what we can do, and how our services can help you out. So it's slightly more lengthy. It works in that manner.
Yeah. And I always say to people who really want to use one platform or the other, and I've said this in different podcasts, is both work well, even if you personally have a preference for one. For example, some people say, I want to message people on LinkedIn, but I don't want to send any cold emails because I hate cold emails, or vice versa. I want to send emails, but I don't want to send LinkedIn messages because I hate receiving LinkedIn messages. And the reality is that both work. And by doing both together, you get this maximum ability to connect with and message people and to then to get a response. And the same is true for follow up. So often I speak to clients and say, you had a call, how did it go? Have you followed up? And they'll say, yeah, I've sent them like 3 or 4 emails and I'm not hearing anything back. But as soon as I suggest, oh, well, DM them on LinkedIn, like send them a LinkedIn message, maybe immediately the lead will come back and like engage again. And so like being able to message on both platforms is really, really critical to having like a maximum exposure to talk to the lead, re-engage the lead, get them interested, all of those kinds of things. You're really missing out if you're not doing both, I think.
I cannot agree more. And again, there are so many different combinations that you can use for LinkedIn email. Like one could be you can use LinkedIn for initial touches, where you just connect with the prospect, start the conversation, and then move the whole conversation to either email, or take it on a one-on-one call. And it could be vice versa, where you can start reaching out to people in bulk on email, or once the people that have replied back to you on email, you can just take them, that the warm kind of data set, and you can just connect with them on LinkedIn, which is going to help you with the connection rate. Then with the reference of your old conversation with email, you can just have the conversation about your services on LinkedIn and try to book them in your calendar.
Yeah, that's right. So we would never recommend like too many messages, like just DMing everyone every other day and 3 to 4 messages in a row, then leave them alone. And the same on email, 3 or 4 messages and then leave them alone. Maybe a follow up after a few months, because people will always kind of respond to a follow up if they're interested. And of course, if people say, no, I'm not interested, then we immediately take them out of the sequence and don't message them anymore. Great. Have we missed anything on why to use LinkedIn and email together?
So one thing I would say, I don't know if you have already covered it or not, because you mentioned that a lot of people have personal preferences and they don't want to use either platform for the same reason. But you need to understand, it's when you are doing cold outbound, you are addressing a very large audience, and everybody has their own preferences, just like yourself. So even if you're not fan of LinkedIn or cold emailing, doesn't mean that the rest of the world is not fan of it. So a lot of people are going to appreciate you reaching out to them on email rather than on LinkedIn, and vice versa. So we come across this almost on daily basis across our different campaigns that we run, where somebody would say, oh, okay, here's my email. On LinkedIn, they generally just go like, here's my email, just shoot me an email there and we will have conversation there. I don't want any messages here. And vice versa. A lot of people get back to us on email and they say, oh, here's my LinkedIn profile, just reach out to me there. Don't email me anymore. So when you are doing cold outbound, you have to understand that you are addressing masses instead of your own social circle or your own community where you have your own preference.
Yeah. And I think as long as the messaging is respectful, full of value, and relevant, then nobody can really complain. If they're not interested, they just politely decline, and then we all move on with our day. Our job is not to bother people or annoy them, but to try and offer
Yeah, and
value.
it goes back to the again data thing too. Like you have to have your data super targeted. You need to have some kind of personalization with your messaging, and then the third step would be the one that we are talking about right now.
Yeah, right people, right message, right value, that kind of thing. Okay, great. Thank you for your time again today. See you in the next episode.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks for having me.